everyone. I'm the president of SmartDog Services, and I'm joined today by Doug Owens, Senior Director over Applications for SmartDog Services. And we've had a lot of requests from customers about some of the tools we use for optimizing eBusiness Suite. And so we're going to spend a few minutes today, probably a shorter session than average, to go through some of those tools, the specific things that they do and don't do. And for these tools, if you're a SmartDog customer, chances are pretty good that we've actually run these on your environment. But these tools are really available to any customer that has a contract in place with us. So if you're new to SmartDog or new to this presentation, just contact us and we'll let you know exactly how to get this set up. The reason these tools are in place is really for us to get to know you better, and frankly, so we can serve you better. We've always believed that intimacy and trust comes from us really sharing information. And what we've done is we've automated the gathering of information so that we can do a better job. And so that maybe we could help you find some things that are in your system that aren't inherently available. So this is really the fifth in a series of 17 webinars on the EBS Summit series. And the EBS Summit series is really something, it's a labor of love for us, because what we learned is that with the extension of these support dates and a lot of the renewed emphasis around cloud infrastructure from Oracle, customers are looking at their old e-business suite and seeing it as the new future. It is now the system of record to the systems of the future. They're keeping their AP in place, but they're focusing on mobility and e-commerce and expansion, and integration, and a lot of things like IoT, Internet of Things, and things that really make top-line value and make the system more valuable across the board. So what we've done is we prepared a series of things that we believe are integral to your getting the most value out of the software you already own. And this is really the fifth in that series. And our goal is to kind of go through the diagnostics that are available to our customers so that you'll understand what's available from SmartDog and how we may be able to help you kind of sift through all the things that are going on in what could be seen as a very large and complex system. So you'll know where to target your efforts in looking for improvements in that environment. Really are three major diagnostics that we're going to talk about. First is Watchdog Diagnostics, which goes into the business side of your system and identifies opportunities for improvements and things that you can do to run the system better. The second one is Bloodhound Diagnostics, which catalogs your customizations and identifies all those changes that have been made to core base e-business suite code, because if you're going to maintain it going forward, it's not a bad idea to know that it's there. And the third is really to look at the license right diagnostics, and understanding your licensing usage and entitlements is really key to your ability to be able to get the most value out of the software and not incur licensing events that are unintended. And for each of those, we're going to talk about some specific examples, and then we're going to move on to questions. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the Watchdog Diagnostics, and I'll turn it over to Doug.
All right, thanks, Scott. So we've been serving customers for over 25 years, and one thing about EBS is we found is everybody struggles with the same thing. It's not unique to each company. So, invoice data that's wrong or stuck transactions. So what we did is we developed these diagnostics over the last 10 years or so that would measure things that each customer struggles with. It's designed to be run on a recently cloned version of your production instances. A lot of our metrics are date and time sensitive. And so we just ask for a recent clone of your production instance, and we run it off of 11i or R12. Okay. The kind of things that we look for, it's designed for, are configuration weaknesses. You go live, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and you set up the system one way. Well, your business has changed over those years, and oftentimes customers don't go back and look at those initial configurations. And so we'll spot things that, hey, maybe we set it up a little loose to begin with, but now that we're more mature, we need to tighten that up, and we look for those configuration weaknesses. We'll also look for broken business processes, and a lot of times an IT staff will know, hey, we know we don't run, we know procurement really struggles here. We don't know the magnitude of it, but we've got specific diagnostics that measure certain things. And so we'll we'll be able to not really guess. We'll actually know, hey, these are the actual number of issues that we have in this area. And then, of course, we also look at transactional issues, hung transactions or items that didn't interface properly. Oftentimes, there's not a screen in Oracle that you can go and just look at that stuff, right? So the diagnostics will lay that out, and then you can get onto a path to clear those out and then stay on top of them. That's the goal here. Some of the examples that we run across that are pretty common is customers often, due to either lack of training or we just got to get the job done, they'll pay invoices early, and that's a real way to save some cash flow. One thing I always say is if you're going to pay an invoice early, you should get something for that, something back from the supplier at discount. So we look for things like that, invoice price variances. And the thing to always remember with EBS is likely there's a tool that you already own within EBS that will solve the issues. So you don't have to buy additional software. You don't have to, run out and do a lot of things. You can just enable a feature of the software to help you process things better, or maybe you can target some training or those kind of things. So the diagnostics really help you illustrate those issues. And then once you have a clean diagnostic, especially for IT, you can say, look, I know we may have problems with Oracle, but they're really not system related. They're more business related. Let's go focus on those, because now we've got all this noise taken care of and we're rolling. A lot of the things that we find in diagnostics are usually just a symptom of there's a feature in Oracle that can solve this problem without having to buy additional software. Customers don't realize that a lot of our problems can be solved just by turning on something. One of the things that we talked about with people who have difficulty with month-end close is you have to open and close a ton of inventory periods. Well, in one of the upgrades, Oracle provided a solution to be able to do mass open and closing of periods. A lot of customers don't know that, because when they do an upgrade, they just do a technical upgrade and they're up on the latest and greatest, but they don't take advantage of those features. So our diagnostics try to look for some of those things that, hey, customer, if you just turn this on, this problem could go away. There's not necessarily a need to buy more software. It's just implementing one of the millions of features that are already embedded within EBS. But customers don't even know about those to turn them on. And so our diagnostics try to help highlight and illustrate those. Yeah, absolutely. I'll see a person put in for example, some kind of complicated process for handling miscellaneous transactions, and I'll just remind them, Oracle Cycle Count handles that beautifully, and it's auditable and it's approvable and it's innate in the software, and you don't have to do any development. You just have to set it up, test it, and train. And we see that all throughout the applications, whether it's financials, procurement, or supply chain, or even system administration. One of the things we look at system administration is people who've never logged on to the system. Well, if you've got users who've never logged on, you probably should cut them off. That way you don't have a license issue later on. But there's no screen in Oracle that will tell you that, right? So our diagnostics help find those things, again, that are common to every customer.
Being able to know exactly how much, for example, one of the good ones is order management price overrides. Oftentimes the CFO will have a suspicion that, hey, I think we're doing this some, but I don't know the magnitude of it. We have a diagnostic that tells exactly how many times and how much off of the list price things were discounted, and just being able to know what that is and measure that, and then being able to do a corrective action. These diagnostics really provide that information for not only IT, but also the business, the CFO, the supply chain manager, the HR manager, those kind of things. So let me give you guys some examples of things that we see that are pretty common. And I think Scott mentioned invoice price variance. This is one thing that we often see that's set up loosely because we don't want invoices to go on hold. But what happens over time is you end up paying over what your contracted amount was. And so just a simple change of setups and maybe processing will fix that. But we want to highlight that because a CFO who, especially someone who came in, 3 years after the implementation, they have no idea how those original configurations were set. So this gives them that data. They'll be able to look at that and know. We had a customer that really struggled with month end. They had all these stuck transactions. They didn't know where to begin to clean them up. Their close period didn't include inventory as a close process, which is really kind of unheard of. We were able to identify all these issues, work with them to remediate them, and now their close time is literally within 5 to 7 business days. And it's made things so much easier for the accounting folks. And that was just being able to highlight what was preventing them from closing properly. Oracle close process is not just simple. It's complicated, and there's many steps. And if you don't do those steps in order and the proper way, you're going to have problems. So the diagnostics really help aiding in that. I talked about the sales orders, the CFO. We had a CFO, when he saw the number, was like, oh my goodness, this has always kind of been on the back burner. This has got to be on the front burner. We've got to get this done this fiscal year because this may be harming or helping our customers more than we intend. So implementing advanced pricing to help that, and they knew they owned the module was a big deal. And then another customer was paying supplier invoices over 22 days earlier than the payment terms, and they were getting nothing out of that, nothing from the suppliers. Suppliers were just collecting the money, which is great. But if you're going to do that, hey, let's get a discount. Let's get something back for that. Let's get something for our goodwill. And what we found out was most of the time it was just a process and a training issue. And not all the issues are that simple. But I tell you what, a lot of them are. And when you start finding these small little things and you start implementing them, the next thing you know, everybody likes the system and they don't hate it. And that's the goal of this, is to get people to embrace the system and use it fully. So that's the watchdog. Let's move on to the bloodhound diagnostics. So, all right, everybody does customizations with EBS. The problem is you do so many over time, you lose track of them, right? You don't know what you did or why. And so we developed the bloodhound to go in and to, first of all, list all of your customizations, just to know what they are, and then also extract the code. One of the big things we see people struggle with are forms personalizations. They're all over the place. There's really it's difficult to see what they are and what they do. Where our bloodhound will go and grab those and pull those out, and you can see those. It'll also help for those of you guys who are pre-12.2, it'll also help you see what customizations would cause you issues when you do go to 12.2, because as you may be aware, with 12.2, you have hot patching. And in order to facilitate hot patching, you have to have your customizations registered in a certain place. So our bloodhound does that. What this allows customers to do is to, one, know all of their customizations, including things like BI Publisher, including forms personalizations, workflows. Workflows are often hidden. You don't know what is the customization of workflows, triggers, AME approvals, those kind of things that are set up and evolve over time. You kind of lose sight of those. So the bloodhound does catalogs those. And so we've seen customers use this for audit purposes to document all their customizations. We use it when we are supporting a customer to troubleshoot. If we are troubleshooting a customization, so we don't know what the customization does, we go look at the bloodhound, we can look at that code, and we can pretty quickly tell what's going on and maybe give a suggestion to remediate that.
Well, one thing that we've seen is that we'll get brought into a very tense issue with a SEV1 request with Oracle support being non-responsive. We'll run the diagnostic and find out that actually that element has a customization that wouldn't have even applied to Oracle support if they were responding. So to me, knowing what's different lets you know where to go look. So I think that's a big part of it too, is just knowing what your starting point is, what's your baseline.
Absolutely. Other big thing that customers use this for is to retire old code that's no longer being used. And that, I know that happens all the time. That's all over the place. Well, get that code out of there, get it out of the way so it's not causing any issues, retire that. This will let you know not only what it does, but when the last time it was engaged. So the Bloodhound is really good for an IT staff wanting to get their arms around the customizations that are going on, especially if you're new to the company. You don't know what those are. They've been developed before you join. You want to know what's going on there.
And the customization, are they just the ones that are registered in AOL, or are they just the ones that are in Custom?
They're in both places.
So it's server side, it's
Yeah.
forms, it's within the apps, it's database, it's a pretty comprehensive view of customizations.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. So that's the Bloodhound. It's our customers really find this one handy. All right, and the third one, I'm going to turn this back over to Scott, the license right diagnostics.
So I think the one thing that we've learned is that, licensing is complicated. It's interesting. We talk to customers a lot, and of course we deal with EBS install-based customers, and what we've learned is that it's really hard to know what you own. I mean, many customers, they have 4, 5, 6 order documents. Some are concurrent, they're concurrent licensing metrics. Others are named user metrics. There's professional. There's all these different things in terms of the difference in the metrics of how the licensing works. The other thing is that there's a difference in over time. So you've got things where, a product changes names, or one product becomes 2 products, or one product, you have to decide which way it's going to go. And so it's really difficult at the surface level just to know what you run. And then the second thing is it's also kind of difficult to know. It's difficult to know what you own. It's also difficult to know what you're running. So for me, you have a finance user who looks at inventory. Is that 1 license or 2? You have someone that has view only. Well, depending on how they log in, is that a license, yes or no? You've got someone that was set up as a test user that, as Doug said earlier, has never logged into the system ever. Are they indeed a user if they never transacted? And so what we've done with License Right Diagnostics, it really comes as kind of it's part of an overall service offering that we have from SmartDog Services is, number one is knowing what you're running is kind of what that's about. So we have tools that will go into the system and we'll look at the different licensing consumption models in place, whether it's concurrent use, professional user, usage-based, component-based. So we're going to give you a catalog of the usage based on what's going on in the system. Now, we can't tell you whether or not you have a license event, because if I bought eBusiness Suite in 2003, I could do different things with it. I had different entitlements than if I bought eBusiness Suite in 2004, because your contract really dictates what your entitlements are. But the reason that License Right exists is because, honestly, it's extremely important to know what you're running and what Oracle would see as your license obligations. And it's really important to know what your entitlements are based on what you purchased. So we're going to help you solve one half of that equation. Obviously, as a consulting firm, we're happy to help you with the other part. But the automated collection of the license consumption information, that's something that we do for all of our customers. And frankly, to me, you look at the different things that could turn into examples of how you could be impacted by a licensing event. There are a lot of things on the technology side, like, you're using VMware, and Oracle has a very strict view of how VMware licenses are consumed. You may be running on Amazon Web Services, and Oracle looks at their OCP usage differently than if you're running on Oracle's infrastructure or running on an on-prem box. And then in terms of the licensing side, there are some very specific stipulations around BI Publisher. There's some strict stipulations around advanced pricing and some of the consumption-based metrics that if you don't know what you're running and you don't know what you're doing, you don't know whether or not you face any risk of, number one, honestly, having an audit event or triggering an audit exposure. And number two is you may have things that you own that you're not using that you ought to be using. So understanding what you're running and understanding what you own, I think is kind of part of the job of every person that runs Oracle, because you really should be managing this as an asset, because it is. It's a very expensive one. It's a very powerful one, and it's really all about kind of getting the most value out of the software. So from SmartDog Services, we've always believed that, and if you go to our mission statement, helping customers get value out of the software they already have. And from Doug's point, knowing what you're using, knowing what you've customized, understanding kind of what capabilities you've uncorked. I mean, that's a big part of this process is automating the discovery, so you really know what that is.
Well, and the other thing is knowing the real facts. Oftentimes people say, well, I think we have this, or I think we have that, or, the diagnostics give you real facts in your system. And so you don't have to guess anymore. You don't have to guess if you have 10 AP users. You'll know how many you have. You don't have to guess if you're having issues with invoice price variance. You'll know exactly what that is. And so that's what I think a lot of our customers like about the diagnostics. It takes out the guessing, and now you actually know what's going on.
All right, guys, I had said earlier today that this would be a quicker session. It's an overview of the diagnostics. We have had some discussions about how frequently run it. I mean, typically, Doug, how often would you typically run this with a customer?
Well, for our existing customers who are on a certain model, we run this quarterly for them. And what we do is it's a good measuring stick. What progress did we make? What new issues came up? Our goal is to help a customer clear these things up and then run it quarterly. For the Bloodhound, not as often, right? Once we have a good handle on what the customizations are, we'll probably run that once every 6 months or a year.
All right, very good. And then if anyone has any questions, please feel free to type it into the chat window.
Yes, there are a couple of questions, Scott and Doug.
Okay.
Jeffrey Spall has asked a question that he's concerned that these diagnostics that we collect will be shared with Oracle LMS.
Hey, Jeff. Under no circumstances ever and ever and ever, ever would we ever share anything with Oracle. As a matter of fact, if you asked us to share stuff with Oracle, we would send it to you and let you send it to them. That's a slippery slope, and we're just not going to get on it. And this is your data, and we are fully non-disclosed on anything related to your stuff.
Okay, thank you, Scott. The second question is, if we are not a SmartDog customer, can we still get the scripts to run these diagnostics?
Actually, they're only for SmartDog customers, and the way that works is that our contract is basically a $0 agreement. It's an open-ended MSA, so there's no charge for the service. We've actually had customers ask for statements of work for $0, so they could prove to their management that we really weren't going to charge them for it. And by golly, we built them a statement of work for $0. But this is our proprietary stuff. So we spent a decade solving problems, putting into code, building it into not scripts, but programs that have error checking and validation, and it's not just kind of stuff that we go to a command line and run them. And so we do run those. We provide those to customers at no charge. We don't withhold any information. We don't say, oh, I found something really awful, and if you pay me, I'll tell you what it is. But we do require that you have a contract in place to protect us from an IP perspective and to protect you from a, non-disclosure and security and all that kind of stuff.
Very good. Scott, there was one more question, but I think you answered it on the previous one, was what is the cost of the SmartDog diagnostic tools? And I think you answered it very clearly.
Actually, I will say this. We won't ask you to cut us a check, but I will say that we're going to ask you to provide a coordinator on your side to basically, help with network access, to work on getting the recent clone or finding the right environment. So there's probably, for any customer reviewing an MSA, it's going to be a couple hours of legal time or an hour, depending on your legal staff, and doing the coordination. And then we run these at no charge. There is no bill that comes. But then we would ask you to spend some time with us afterward, and there's no charge for this as well, to have someone from Doug, either Doug or someone on his team, to go through the findings. So there is some time spent, but no money spent.
Very good. That's all the questions we have. If there's any more, please put them on the chat window. Otherwise, we're pretty much, we are right at the half hour right now.
Well, I tell you what, I'm going to do this. If there is a question, please feel free to type it in. I'm going to go ahead and answer the unasked question, which I've been asked at least 50 times, which is, what's the catch? So if you're not a SmartDog customer, why would you do this? Why would you take time? How can you afford it? And our business model has always been, we want to be the Oracle customer's best friend. We want you to get value out of the software that you own. And quite frankly, if we can get to know you better, and we know your system better than other people for sure, and for a lot of our customers better than they know their system, then when you do that acquisition or that divestiture, when you expand your warehouse, when you have an upgrade, when you need an FSG, or you're trying to figure out what reporting solution to buy, we believe that we're going to have more intimacy and we're more likely to get hired. So this, I think, in some ways helps us get paperwork in place with customers where we maybe didn't have it. And it also makes us better suited to help you with that little bit of work that comes up. And because we do fractional work, we do incident-based consulting, if you need help for 15 minutes, we've actually paved the way to do that. So, maybe there is a nefarious scheme behind it all, which is we want you guys to be customers. But the bottom line is that there's no hooks to this whatsoever. And frankly, if we run this and it's not valuable, you won't be hiring us. If we run it and you can do it yourself, you also won't be hiring us. This is kind of our chance to get to know customers and to extend our business model. So that's all we have for today. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.